For months, a billionaire tech mogul watched as his newborn son struggled to sleep, always upright, never lying flat, and not a single doctor could explain why. He spent millions on specialists, private nurses, and the best hospitals, but nothing worked. The baby cried every night, and no one had answers. It wasn't until a quiet nanny, hired to care for the child, noticed something strange. She followed her instincts, uncovered a dark secret hidden beneath medical reports and false diagnoses, and what she found shocked the world. This wasn't a rare condition. It was something much worse, and it had been planned all along. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Tales of Kindness. We post videos every day. Give the video a like if you enjoy this story, and leave a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're listening. We know the mansion felt quieter than ever since the day Mary passed away. It was supposed to be a time of celebration, the birth of Luke Sterling's first child. Instead, it turned into the worst day of his life. Luke, a billionaire who made his fortune in the tech world of Silicon Valley, had been excited to start a new chapter with Mary. She had always dreamed of being a mother, but the pregnancy was high risk, and though the doctors tried everything, Mary didn't survive the delivery. Luke was in the hallway when they told him. His world collapsed. The baby was alive, but the tiny boy was weak and needed constant medical attention. Luke stood by the glass window of the neonatal unit for hours, staring at the incubator. He didn't know what to feel. Mary was gone. Now he was alone with a child who reminded him of everything he'd lost. In the weeks that followed, Luke buried himself in work. His sprawling mansion in the hills of California, once filled with laughter and plans for the future, became cold and empty. Every room held a memory of Mary, her voice, her scent, her smile. He couldn't bear to stay still for long. Business meetings, product launches, and new investments filled his days. At night, he stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The baby, now named Noah, had been brought home, but not in the way Luke had imagined. There was no warm welcome, no family photos, just nurses, machines, and strict care routines. Luke didn't know how to be a father, so he hired a team to do it for him. He brought in the best professionals, experienced nannies, qualified pediatric nurses, and even child therapists. All were highly skilled, but nothing seemed to help. Noah cried almost every night, a strange, pained cry that echoed through the halls. Despite all the attention and care, Noah showed no signs of improvement. Each new professional arrived optimistic. They followed medical plans, changed feeding schedules, adjusted sleep routines, and tried every therapy available. But it always ended the same way. After a few days or weeks, they'd come to Luke with the same look in their eyes, confused, tired, helpless. Noah refused to sleep lying down. He only fell asleep if someone held him upright or propped him up with pillows. Even then, it wasn't peaceful. He fidgeted constantly, and his sleep never lasted more than a few hours. Luke began to believe the birth trauma had left a deep mark on the child. Maybe Noah missed Mary the way he did, even though he'd never known her. Maybe something inside him was broken. The doctors tried to give Luke logical explanations. They talked about birth stress, neurological development, and rare sleep disorders. Some mentioned sensory issues. Others said it might just be a phase. None gave real answers. They prescribed medications, suggested therapy dogs, and even offered experimental treatments. Luke agreed to everything. He just wanted his son to get better, but no matter what they tried, nothing worked. Noah kept crying night after night. Sometimes Luke sat outside the nursery door, listening. It made him feel useless. The staff often rotated, and few stayed long. Those who lasted more than a month usually left quietly, unable to explain why they couldn't handle the job. They weren't fired. They just gave up. One nurse said the house felt heavy. Another whispered that the baby's eyes unsettled her. Luke dismissed those comments, but deep down, he felt the same unease. Luke avoided the nursery whenever possible. The crying reminded him of everything he hadn't fixed. What if he worked harder, donated more, built something new? Would the pain fade? But it never did. The silence between Noah's cries was even worse. It was during those moments that Luke felt the weight of his loneliness. He'd always been a man of logic and progress. His life was built on solving problems. But this was something he couldn't fix with code or money. He didn't understand what Noah needed. He wasn't sure if Noah even wanted to be touched. Every time he tried to hold him, the baby tensed. Yet somehow, he still fell asleep faster in someone's arms than in the crib. Luke started wondering if Noah was searching for something, for someone who was no longer there. Maybe he was waiting for Mary too. The mansion, though full of people during the day, felt lifeless. The staff walked on eggshells. Music no longer played in the halls. Mary's piano sat untouched in the corner of the living room. Luke often stared at it, remembering how she used to sing softly to her belly during pregnancy. He thought of those nights often. The baby inside her had kicked every time she played. Now there was only silence and Noah's strange sleep habits. As more nurses came and went, Luke began to lose hope. Each goodbye felt like another failure. Still, he kept trying. He refused to leave his son alone. Even if he didn't know how to help, he'd never abandon him. Every night, when Noah finally settled and closed his eyes in someone's arms, Luke stood in the doorway, watching, waiting, wondering if tomorrow would be different. But deep down, the pain only grew. When Amelia arrived at the mansion, everyone noticed something different about her, even if they couldn't explain it. There was something in her eyes, calm, observant, strong. She didn't talk much, and when she did, her voice was soft and respectful. Her posture was steady, her steps careful. She introduced herself as a nanny with experience caring for children with special needs. Luke's staff had seen many professionals come and go, but Amelia didn't seem nervous or overconfident. She simply observed. She didn't ask too many questions. She listened as she walked through the mansion on her first day. She took mental notes on the environment, the baby's routine, the medical equipment, and how people acted around the child. She didn't criticize or suggest changes. She just watched. But from the moment she saw Noah, something inside her shifted. She could tell right away this wasn't an ordinary case. What no one in the mansion knew was that Amelia carried a pain that had never fully healed. 2 years ago, she'd lost her only son, Hugo, when he was just 4 months old. He'd gotten sick one night, and the symptoms seemed mild at first, just a bit of fever and some crying. But within hours, his condition worsened. At the hospital, they said it was a simple infection and he'd be fine. The doctors gave assurances and sent them home. That same night, Hugo died in his crib. Later, they learned the infection had been more severe. But by then, it was too late. Amelia blamed the hospital. She believed they hadn't looked closely enough, hadn't cared enough. She tried to fight legally, but there was no clear proof. The case closed. Since then, Amelia kept her grief hidden. She didn't talk about Hugo. She focused on helping other children, hoping it would ease the guilt and loss. Over time, Amelia developed a kind of sixth sense. She didn't call it that, but that's how it felt. With every baby she worked with, she paid attention to the little things, the way they cried, how they breathed, how they moved. Doctors sometimes overlooked those signs, but Amelia didn't. She was always alert. She couldn't stop what happened to Hugo, but she could help other kids. When she looked at Noah, she felt that same alert. He wasn't just uncomfortable or restless. He wasn't just a fussy baby. Amelia noticed how tense his little body was, how his fingers twitched when he cried, how his eyes never fully relaxed. There was something deeper going on. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she sat with him, let him cry, and watched closely. When she held him upright, she felt the way he tried to settle. It wasn't just a need for affection, it was discomfort. She was sure of it. Amelia started keeping a notebook. She recorded every detail. What time did Noah cry? How long did it last? What position helped him sleep? How did he react to different sounds and touches? She still didn't talk much with the nurses or therapists. She didn't want to seem like she thought she knew more than them, but she was gathering information. Her approach was different from the rest of the staff. While most followed schedules and checklists, Amelia worked based on observation and instinct. She moved slowly, giving the baby time to get used to her. In the first 3 days, Noah began responding to her touch. He still cried, but there were moments when he looked at her and calmed slightly. She noticed he disliked bright lights and sudden noises. She adjusted the room, turned off the ceiling lamps, used a small nightlight, played soft white noise. Slowly, she created an environment where he could feel safe. Luke didn't pay much attention to Amelia at first. To him, she was just another nanny in a long line of specialists. But after a week, he noticed small changes. The crying was still there, but shorter. Noah slept a bit longer when Amelia held him. One night, Luke passed by the nursery and saw her holding Noah close, humming softly. The baby's head rested on her shoulder, his hands loose instead of clenched. It was the most peaceful he'd looked in weeks. Luke didn't say anything, but he watched for a long time. Amelia stayed focused on the baby, rocking him gently. Later, one of the nurses mentioned Amelia's notes. She'd asked about certain medications, not to question them, but to understand side effects. Luke grew curious. He asked Amelia to meet with him privately. In their meeting, she was calm but direct. "It's not just that he's difficult," she said. "He's in pain." She didn't try to diagnose Noah. She wasn't a doctor, but she described patterns she'd recognized: muscle tension, inconsistent breathing during sleep, delayed physical reactions. She mentioned the possibility of silent reflux or neurological sensitivity, conditions sometimes overlooked in babies. Luke listened carefully. No one had ever spoken to him like this, not with pity or false hope, but with careful, honest concern. For the first time in a long time, he felt like someone really saw Noah, not as a case or a problem to solve, but as a child suffering. Amelia didn't promise miracles. She just asked for time and freedom to adjust his care. Luke agreed. That night, Amelia sat with Noah again. She held him the same as before, but this time whispered something only she and the baby could hear. It wasn't just compassion, it was instinct. And for the first time, she felt a quiet connection. Over the next weeks, Amelia built a strong bond with the baby. She didn't rush anything. Every day, she followed the same slow rhythm: feeding, rocking, cleaning, observing. She never forced Noah to play or sleep. She waited until he was ready. Unlike the other nannies before her, Amelia didn't treat Noah like a patient. She didn't focus only on medical routines or therapy exercises. She treated him like a child. She spoke softly to him, sat on the floor to play, sang simple songs. At first, he barely reacted, but slowly, she noticed small changes. His eyes followed her more often. He held her fingers a little longer. Once, he even smiled when she showed him a soft rattle toy. That was new. Noah almost never smiled. That moment made Amelia feel hopeful. Something was changing. He was responding not to medicine, but to human connection. Nights became an important part of their bond. Amelia stayed up during his worst hours. When Noah cried, she didn't panic or leave it to the nurses. She sat with him in the rocking chair, holding him gently and speaking in a calm voice. Sometimes she didn't speak at all, just hugged him until he stopped crying. Luke noticed. He started checking the security cameras less. He trusted Amelia. He no longer felt the need to step in or ask for updates every hour. One night, he even stopped by the nursery and watched Amelia with Noah. She didn't notice he was there. She was holding the baby upright, letting him rest on her shoulder. He wasn't crying, he was asleep. For the first time in a long time, Luke felt something besides stress. He felt relief. The baby was okay, at least for now. Amelia was doing something none of the others could. Over time, Amelia started noticing patterns in Noah's behavior that didn't feel normal. It wasn't just the crying or sleep issues. She paid close attention to how he reacted to lying flat. Every time she placed him on his back, he tensed up. His arms jerked slightly, and he made little grunts like he was uncomfortable. When she propped him with pillows or held him sitting up, he calmed faster. She tested it several times, always gently. The result was always the same. Lying flat caused distress. He didn't scream, but his body showed signs of stress. Most people might have overlooked it, but Amelia didn't. She started writing these observations in her notebook again, just like before. It became clear this wasn't just a habit or random behavior. There was something physical happening, and it wasn't improving. In fact, it seemed Noah was adapting to live with the discomfort. Amelia began researching during her off hours. She looked up conditions in babies that cause distress when lying down. She read about acid reflux, neurological disorders, and muscle tone issues. The more she read, the more worried she got. Noah showed small signs of several possibilities, but nothing matched exactly. Still, something was wrong, and what bothered her most was that no one else seemed to notice or care enough to ask deeper questions. The therapists focused on basic milestones. The doctors stuck to routines. Luke trusted the professionals, but none had stayed long enough to truly understand Noah. Amelia felt a growing urgency. She didn't want to wait until things got worse. She thought of how Hugo had shown subtle signs that were overlooked until it was too late. That memory pushed her to act, carefully, but firmly. She decided to watch Noah even closer, paying attention to the smallest movements, noises, and reactions. As the days passed, Amelia and Noah became almost inseparable. The other staff noticed too. The baby's crying decreased. He made more eye contact. During bath time, he no longer flinched as much when touched. When placed in his special upright position, he stayed calm longer than before. Amelia used those moments to encourage him, smiling, showing toys, making soft sounds. Luke, who once kept his distance, started joining them sometimes. At first, he just watched. Then slowly, he began asking questions. Amelia always answered honestly, never pretending to have all the answers. One night, she handed him the notebook where she'd tracked all of Noah's behaviors. He flipped through it silently. It was full of notes, times, reactions, small drawings of positions. "You've been seeing what others didn't," he said. Amelia nodded. She wasn't looking for praise. She just wanted someone else to finally see what she saw. "He's in pain." Amelia didn't make bold claims or dramatic speeches. Instead, she kept doing what she'd been doing from the start, observing, caring, listening to the child. But now she had a goal, to find out what was really wrong. She requested another round of medical exams, not just routine ones, but detailed scans and tests. Luke agreed. He trusted her now. There was something real between Amelia and Noah, a bond that hadn't existed before. It was built through long nights, patience, and the small progress only someone paying true attention could see. While waiting for results, Amelia kept observing Noah even closer. She adjusted everything: the angle of his crib, his feeding position, the type of clothes he wore. Every detail mattered. And deep down, a question kept growing in her mind. What was causing this strange behavior exactly? Why had so many overlooked it? She was determined to find out, no matter what. One morning, Amelia was giving Noah his usual bath in the large sink of the mansion's bathroom. This had become a quiet, familiar time for both. Warm water, a soft sponge, and a calm setting helped the baby relax. She supported his back gently with one hand while washing with the other. But as she slowly ran her soapy fingers down his spine, something happened. His shoulders tensed, his face changed. He didn't cry, but he made a tight expression Amelia had never seen before. It was brief, almost like a shiver. She froze, her hand still on his back. That wasn't a tickle reaction or cold water. It was something more, a deep, silent discomfort. Amelia didn't say anything out loud. She finished the bath gently, holding him close afterward, but her mind kept going back to that moment. Something wasn't right, and now she'd felt it. Amelia didn't jump to conclusions. She waited 2 days and followed the same routine, watching carefully again. When she reached the same spot on his spine with her hand, Noah had exactly the same reaction. His muscles tightened, his eyes squeezed shut, and he grimaced in discomfort, but still no sound. It was subtle, but now she was sure. It wasn't a random tick or reflex. It was real and specific. Amelia dried him slowly and held him longer that day, whispering and rubbing his back gently in other spots. No other area caused a similar reaction. That part of his spine was clearly sensitive. She pressed lightly on the area again, and again he reacted, not with crying, but with a stiffness in his body, like bracing for pain. Amelia's heart started racing. For weeks, she'd seen him struggle to lie flat or sleep comfortably. Now there was a clue. She began recalling all the signs: the odd sleep position, the constant need to be upright, the crying no treatment calmed. Until now, everyone assumed it was behavioral, emotional, or neurological. But what if it wasn't? What if it was physical and specific? Amelia didn't want to sound alarmist, but she couldn't ignore what she'd seen and felt. The reaction wasn't general discomfort. It came from a spot, an area on his back. She decided to examine the area again during diaper changes, using her fingers to feel gently under the skin. There were no visible bruises, marks, or swelling, but her trained hand could feel a very slight lump, something firm and out of place, almost like a small knot beneath the skin. Her stomach tightened. She'd seen this kind of thing once before, years ago with another child. She didn't want to believe it yet, but her suspicion grew. She wrote detailed notes on everything: the time of day, the baby's body angle, how deep she pressed, what kind of reaction he gave. Amelia didn't tell Luke right away. She needed more certainty and feared causing unnecessary panic. But every time she bathed or changed Noah, she checked that same area gently, confirming it was always the same response. The discomfort was consistent. She started thinking more seriously about internal issues, possibly bone-related. Maybe something hadn't formed right, or something had shifted. It could be a small vertebrae problem, or even something deeper. She checked some medical materials at night, searching for possibilities. The more she read, the more concerned she became. It didn't seem like a muscle issue. It didn't behave like a nerve problem either. It was too specific. Amelia began feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Fear, not just worry, real fear of what she might uncover. One night, after Noah had fallen asleep in her arms, Amelia sat in the nursery without turning on the lights. She stared into the darkness, holding the baby close. Her thoughts raced. She wanted to talk to a specialist, but didn't know who to trust. The last time she'd trusted doctors, her own son died. That thought never left her. She didn't want to make the same mistake again, but she also knew waiting could be worse. Noah couldn't speak, couldn't explain what he felt. If she didn't act, no one else would. Finally, she decided to talk to Luke the next morning. She'd show him her notes, explain everything she'd seen and felt. She didn't have a full answer yet, but she knew where the problem was located. It wasn't just in Noah's behavior, it was inside his body. And for the first time, she truly feared what might be hidden there. The next morning, as she prepared the bath again, Amelia felt heavy. Her hands moved carefully as she undressed Noah. The water was ready. She placed him in the sink gently, supporting him with care. Her heart pounded. She knew she had to check again. As her fingers moved down his back, she reached the same area, the same result. A small shiver, tension in the shoulders, a silent sign of pain. This time, she didn't pretend it was nothing. She kept her hand on that spot a moment longer, not pressing harder, just staying there, feeling the warmth of his skin. Her fear grew. It wasn't just her instinct anymore. It was real. Something was physically wrong, and it had been ignored for too long. Amelia felt a knot form in her chest. She wasn't just worried anymore. She was scared. Scared of what this might mean. Scared of what she was about to uncover. Amelia started writing everything in a notebook she kept hidden in her bedroom drawer. Every day, she noted Noah's reactions, what time he cried, how he behaved when touched, how long he slept, and what position helped him rest. She didn't do it just out of curiosity. She wanted proof, a pattern, something to back her growing suspicions. At night, when things were quiet, she sat on the edge of her bed and wrote by dim light, carefully recording the small but important details no one else seemed to notice. The same things kept happening, over and over. Every time Noah was placed flat in his crib, he'd fall asleep for a few minutes, then wake crying, body tense and rigid. When held upright or placed in a sitting position, he calmed faster and slept longer. This pattern repeated so consistently that Amelia could no longer ignore it. She raised her concerns gently with the rotating nurses. She didn't accuse anyone or act like she knew more. She just shared what she'd noticed, hoping someone would agree or offer more info. But their responses were always the same. It's normal for babies with his history. The doctor already checked this. These things happen. It's part of his condition. Amelia didn't accept those answers. Not because she thought she was smarter, but because she'd seen the baby suffering and felt something deeper was wrong. The nurses spoke like they were reading a script. No one asked follow-up questions. No one seemed interested in what Noah was trying to show with his body. They just followed the routine. Amelia's frustration grew. She felt alone in what she was seeing, and that loneliness turned into quiet determination. She'd keep watching. She'd keep writing. One late night, Amelia was passing the nursery when she heard soft shifting, not crying, just position-changing sounds. She opened the door slowly and saw Noah pushing his tiny hands against the crib bars, trying to stay in a sitting position. He was clearly tired, eyes half closed, but still fighting to stay upright. His body leaned slightly forward, knees bent in an odd way. Amelia stepped closer, her heart pounding. She didn't move him right away. Instead, she watched. It was painful to see. He was trying to sleep, but his body wouldn't let him lie down. He wasn't doing it because someone told him to. He was doing it to avoid pain. This wasn't learned behavior. It was something instinctive. She lifted him gently and sat in the rocking chair, holding him in the sitting position. Within minutes, he relaxed. She felt his weight shift. He fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, Amelia added it all to her notebook. She drew a small sketch of how Noah positioned himself, along with the exact time and what she observed. She also started marking differences in his breathing patterns based on how he was placed in the crib. Sitting upright, his breathing was smoother, calmer. Lying flat, it was shallow, sometimes with little gasps or hiccup-like sounds. No one else was tracking these things. Amelia began wondering why the previous nannies left so quickly. Had they seen signs and ignored them? Had someone told them to stop asking questions? Or were they just too focused on instructions to notice? Amelia wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding, that things had just been overlooked, but her instinct said otherwise. The silence from everyone else, the lack of concern, the easy excuses, it all felt too convenient. And the more she paid attention, the more dangerous that silence began to feel. Luke didn't know about the notebook. Amelia didn't hide it because she distrusted him. She just wasn't ready. He'd finally started to relax a bit after weeks of worry. And Amelia didn't want to panic him again without solid proof. But she was starting to feel pressure. Something wasn't right, and no one else seemed willing to admit it. She considered asking for outside help, but didn't know who to call. She still had no name for what was happening, just symptoms and reactions. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave her. She started reviewing the baby's medical files at night when the nurses were distracted. What she found confused her. There were reports with vague language, repeated notes, and missing entries for certain weeks. It wasn't what she expected. The more she read, the more it felt like someone had gone out of their way to make things seem normal. That scared her even more. Another night passed, and the same pattern repeated. Noah cried after being laid down. He tried to stay upright. Amelia rushed to help him. This time, as she held him, she didn't cry or panic. She just stayed still, rocking slowly, eyes wide open. She stared at the crib, the place where he'd tried to sleep. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just medical. Noah wasn't just reacting to pain. He was surviving it. He was adapting in ways no baby should have to. She looked at him sleeping now, breathing easier. Her hand rested on his back near the sensitive area. And that's when she knew this wasn't about an injury or condition. It was part of something bigger. Something was being hidden. She didn't know who was responsible or how deep it went. But one thing was clear. Someone somewhere wasn't telling the truth. And Amelia was running out of time to find out. Amelia's instincts had reached a point where she could no longer ignore them. One afternoon, while Luke was busy with video calls elsewhere in the house, she entered his office on the pretext of delivering mail. She didn't touch anything right away. She acted naturally, just dusting and adjusting items on the shelves. Then, when the moment felt right, she approached the desk. Papers were scattered across it, mostly mail, printed emails, and folders from medical providers. She scanned with her eyes. Most of the language was technical, and she didn't understand all the terms, but she noticed something odd. Several of the same tests had been repeated over and over. MRIs, X-rays, blood panels, many with the same inconclusive results. Attached to some reports were payment receipts to clinics she didn't recognize. When she looked up the clinic names on her phone, they all connected to the same hospital group. That pattern caught her eye. If these tests showed nothing, why were they done so many times? And why were all the follow-ups with the same network of private clinics? It didn't feel right. Amelia pulled her phone from her pocket and carefully photographed the documents. She didn't want to steal anything, just keep a record. She arranged the papers exactly as they'd been and left the room like nothing happened. That night, she reviewed the images and started taking notes. She jotted down doctor names, dates, test types, and payment details. Some documents looked like standard results, but others lacked signatures or had the same doctor listed for different specialties. That wasn't common. She still didn't know what it meant, but it felt wrong. She needed help, someone who could understand medical language and spot what she couldn't. And she knew exactly who to ask. The next night, while Luke was out on a short business trip, Amelia called an old friend named Marta. Years ago, they'd worked together at a hospital. Marta was a medical imaging technician, and they'd always kept in touch. Amelia invited her to the mansion under the guise of catching up and spending time together. When Marta arrived, they chatted like old times, sharing stories and having coffee in the kitchen. Then Amelia mentioned a fun idea. She said it'd be interesting to show Marta the kind of equipment used in wealthy homes. Marta laughed, but agreed to help. Amelia then mentioned Noah and said she was curious if a basic portable scan could show anything unusual on his back, just as a harmless test. Marta agreed, thinking it was just part of Amelia's new job curiosity. She pulled out a portable spinal scanner from her bag, something she used for training workshops and checkups. With smooth movements, Amelia placed Noah in a comfortable upright position and asked Marta to do a light scan of the lower spine. The baby was calm and didn't react much. The machine beeped softly and produced simple digital images on a small screen. Everything was quiet until Marta suddenly stopped. Her face changed. "What is this?" she asked. Amelia leaned closer. There, on the scan image, was something neither expected to see. A small metallic shape, clearly defined near the base of the baby's spine. It wasn't bone, wasn't tissue, it was foreign. Amelia didn't say anything at first. Her mind raced. Marta checked again from different angles. The object didn't move. It had smooth edges and seemed placed intentionally. "This looks like an implant," Marta whispered. Amelia's hands shook. She felt the breath leave her lungs. Why would a baby have an implant? And why had no one mentioned it? Marta was confused, asking questions Amelia couldn't answer. Was he born with this? Do the doctors know? Amelia shook her head. No one ever said anything. None of the reports mentioned this. I've read almost all of them. Marta looked closer at the images, then stepped back. This was done on purpose. This isn't a mistake or something natural. It's inserted, like a tracking chip or something medical. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you like the content on this channel, Tales of Kindness, subscribe and give us a like. It helps a lot. Amelia felt sick. The room spun a little, but she held steady. Noah was now asleep in her arms, oblivious to the storm around him. Marta offered to send the scan image to a trusted radiologist she knew, without giving names. Amelia agreed, but made her promise not to mention the child's identity or location. They couldn't risk exposure yet. When Marta left, she looked worried. You need to find out what that is, and fast, she said. Amelia nodded, already planning her next step. She couldn't sleep that night. Suddenly, everything made more sense, and at the same time, everything became more terrifying. Amelia now understood why Noah reacted so strongly when touched in that spot. It wasn't just pain, his body was protecting itself from something internal. And now she knew why no treatment had worked. They weren't addressing the real issue. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Who approved the implant? Amelia was sure Luke didn't know. He'd trusted the medical team, never questioning the endless list of professionals or test results. Was someone using Noah for experiments? Was it a test subject situation disguised as private care? The thought made Amelia's stomach turn. She needed to find out who placed the implant, when it was done, and what its purpose was. This was no longer just about Noah's health. It was about his safety. She opened her notebook again, wrote implant at the top of a new page, and got to work. That night, Amelia sat in the nursery for hours, barely blinking. She held Noah close, watching his little chest rise and fall. He seemed at peace, but now she knew the truth. Something foreign was inside his body, and no one had explained why. It had been hidden from everyone, or at least from those who cared. Amelia's heart beat faster every time she thought about it. She kept looking at the scan on her phone, zooming in, confirming it over and over. There was no mistake, it was real. And that meant someone had made a choice without permission, without honesty. She didn't know how far it went or who else was involved, but she understood one thing. This was just the beginning. Whatever this implant was, it was part of something much bigger. Amelia was sure of it. And now, more than ever, she was ready to do whatever it took to uncover the truth. Amelia didn't waste time. Early the next morning, she packed the scan images in her notebook into a simple folder. She left the mansion quietly and drove across the city to visit someone she hadn't seen in a long time, Dr. Thomas Arriaga, a retired neurosurgeon. Years ago, after her son's death, Dr. Arriaga had been one of the few who listened without judging. He'd comforted her during her worst time and even helped her understand some medical reports from back then. Now she turned to him again, but this time with a new child's future at risk. She arrived at his modest home and explained everything step by step. He didn't interrupt, just listened, then asked to see the scan. Amelia handed it over without a word. He studied it carefully for several minutes. When he looked up, his face was serious and concerned. Dr. Arriaga placed the scan image on the table and pointed to a small section near the base of the spine. This isn't a mistake, he said. This is deliberate. He explained in simple terms that the object was an artificial spinal nerve stimulator, a device sometimes used in experimental treatments to test how nerve signals could be altered to affect posture and motor development. It wasn't something used on babies, and definitely not approved for casual or long-term use in children. He'd heard of such devices being tested in controlled research settings, always under strict regulation. But this one seemed placed without oversight, without records or warnings. Worse, it was positioned in a way that activated highly sensitive nerve groups. Every time that baby lies down, Dr. Arriaga said, the stimulator is likely sending mild shocks or pressure signals that trigger the exact discomfort you've described. The implant is causing his condition. She'd expected something serious, but not this. So he's not sick? She asked. Dr. Arriaga shook his head. He's reacting to something that shouldn't be there. They've been treating him for a condition caused by this device. Amelia felt like she couldn't breathe. It all made sense now. The useless treatments, the repeated inconclusive tests, the discomfort that never matched any diagnosis. Everything had been wrong because no one was looking for the real cause. Dr. Arriaga continued, this wasn't done by accident. Someone approved this. Someone installed it and didn't tell anyone. Amelia asked if the device could be removed. Dr. Arriaga hesitated. It depends. A specialist would need to evaluate it closely, but yes, it's possible. The real question is, who put it there and why? Amelia felt anger rising inside her. This wasn't a medical case. It was something darker. Someone had done this on purpose. She told Dr. Arriaga about the repeated medical reports and payments to clinics, all linked to the same hospital group. He nodded slowly and said it wouldn't be the first time something like this happened. He explained that in some cases, unethical medical companies run unauthorized trials on patients without consent. The goal isn't always science. It can be profit. If the child seems to have a rare condition, it opens the door to ongoing treatments, endless bills, and special medical equipment. The family never finds the root cause, but keeps paying for care. In Noah's case, it was worse because he couldn't speak or complain. No one would ever know unless someone like Amelia looked closely. They targeted him. She whispered. Dr. Arriaga didn't respond. He didn't need to. The truth was clear. Amelia felt sick. All this time, the baby had been treated for a problem that didn't exist because someone created it. Now she understood the nurse's evasive answers, the missing details and reports, the endless prescriptions that never helped. He wasn't born with a condition. He'd been made to suffer so others could profit. It was a form of sabotage, one that used his body as a tool for someone else's gain. Amelia asked Dr. Arriaga what to do next. He advised gathering more proof, photos, copies of records, anything showing patterns or connections. If you go to authorities now, he warned, they'll want evidence, solid, real proof, not just suspicions. Amelia promised to be careful. She hugged him before leaving, thanking him for his help. As she drove back to the mansion, her mind raced. She was no longer just a nanny. She'd become this child's protector. And now, with the truth in her hands, she had a mission, to stop whoever was behind this before it was too late. When Amelia returned, everything seemed the same. The quiet halls, soft lights, gentle hum of machines, but now it all felt different. She looked at Noah and saw not just a baby in pain, but a victim of something much larger than either of them. She knew now he'd been hurt by design, not accident. That small implant had changed his whole life, and no one had noticed. Amelia was no longer unsure. The confusion, doubt, silence, it all had a reason. Noah had been used. The people who should have protected him had looked away or were part of something bigger. Amelia hugged him tight, whispering softly, "You're not sick, baby. They just made you seem like you were." That night, she didn't sleep. She stayed by his crib with her notebook open. The real fight had begun, and Amelia wasn't going to stop until the truth was exposed. Amelia knew she couldn't stop after discovering the implant. She needed to go further. She started investigating the hospital that handled Noah's early treatments. It wasn't a small facility. It was part of a large medical group known for advanced pediatric care, Horizon Medical Group. On the surface, everything looked professional, clean websites, expert doctors, glowing reviews. But as she dug deeper, she noticed strange connections. The hospital linked to several international pediatric clinics. All had similar language on their sites, phrases like early intervention, rare diagnostics, advanced monitoring. She created a document mapping the relationships between these clinics. Most were registered under different names, but some had overlapping executives and shared addresses with companies in medical tech and pharmaceuticals. Amelia began realizing this wasn't just about Noah. This was a pattern, an organized system. The hospital had likely done the same to other children, and no one was stopping them. She started gathering evidence. Every time she called one of the clinics to ask about services, she recorded the call, using a different name and pretending to be a wealthy mother seeking help for a rare condition in her child. The staff always responded the same way, offering consultations, special diagnostics, and experimental treatments with impressive but vague explanations. No one asked for a full medical history. No one hesitated when she mentioned money. Amelia also found online forums where families shared experiences with rare pediatric disorders. She connected with some privately and started asking questions. She was careful not to reveal too much, just enough to compare notes. In several cases, she found children with symptoms similar to Noah's. Their families had also been treated by clinics in the same network. Most had no real answers, just ongoing treatment plans, growing bills, and constant emotional stress. Amelia's hands shook every time she found another connection. Next, she carefully reviewed the email storage on Luke's office computer, leaving no trace. She wasn't invading his privacy. She had to know what had been sent and received between the mansion and the hospital. She found messages from medical coordinators full of complicated terms, scan results, and treatment suggestions. At first glance, everything seemed professional. But then Amelia noticed something odd. Many messages were copied and pasted from templates. Even the personalized updates on Noah's condition had the same structure as emails sent to other parents she'd spoken with online. The files included billing statements detailing expensive treatments, some of which never happened. It was a system designed to look legitimate, but built on manipulation. They created false hope while draining families financially. Amelia printed and organized everything. Emails, phone records, screenshots, medical notes. She was no longer building just a theory. She was building a case, one backed by facts and undeniable patterns. Once she had enough, she sat down and created a full report. It included timelines, financial records, hospital links, and patient patterns. She added the implant scan image and Dr. Arriaga's written assessment. The final document was over 50 pages. She also backed up everything on a secure drive and made copies. She'd learned from the past. Information this important could disappear easily. Only then did she ask Luke to sit down with her for a serious talk. He didn't know what to expect. At first, he thought maybe it was another update on Noah's sleep or therapy. But as Amelia started showing him the documents, emails, and recordings, he went silent. As she explained each piece, his expression changed. Confusion, then shock, then disbelief. He leaned forward, staring at the evidence. "You're telling me they did this on purpose?" he asked. Amelia looked him in the eyes and simply said, "Yes." His hands shook. For years, he blamed himself for Mary's death, for Noah's condition, for not knowing how to be a father. He'd trusted the professionals, signed everything they told him, paid what they charged. And all that time, he thought he was fighting to give his son a better life. In reality, he'd been feeding a system built on lies. He turned to Amelia. "They used us," he said. "They used him." His voice broke. She nodded but stayed quiet, letting him process. After a few minutes, he sat back. "We have to act," he said firmly. "We can't let this happen to other families." Amelia opened a folder and slid it to him. "This is everything," she said. "We can take it to the press, investigators, anyone willing to listen. But we have to be ready. They won't give up easily." The silence now had weight. Luke stayed up reading every page, checking every note. Amelia sat nearby, watching over Noah. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the storm about to begin. But now they had something they didn't have before, the truth. The carefully built lie that had controlled their lives was crumbling. They knew how it worked, they had proof, and they were done staying silent. Luke was no longer the same man. He'd lost too much already. This time, he was going to fight back with everything he had. Amelia watched as he closed the folder and said, "They turned our pain into profit. But this ends here." The system had used legal terms, complex reports, and false hopes to stay hidden. But now that was over. The truth was out, and no one involved was getting away unscathed. Luke didn't wait. As soon as he reviewed all the evidence Amelia gave him, he called his personal legal team and requested an emergency meeting. Within hours, lawyers, investigators, and data specialists were in his office. He gave full access to his private files, financial records, and every piece of information Amelia had gathered. The team started a private investigation while contacting trusted investigative journalists. Luke understood the risk, but he also knew silence was no longer an option. He wanted the truth exposed. They carefully leaked names, scanned documents, and voice recordings to reporters from major news outlets. The journalists didn't take long to realize they were dealing with something huge. As the story began to spread, it gained attention fast. The first article published 3 days later, and it exploded. Headlines filled news sites. Social media lit up. The world was about to learn what had been hidden for too long. Horizon Medical Group responded quickly, but not with honesty. At first, they denied everything. Press releases called the accusations false, baseless, and deeply offensive. Their spokesperson insisted all treatments followed international medical guidelines. But as more reports came out and more documents surfaced, their story fell apart. Amelia had saved everything. Luke's team had traced money trails and exposed contracts between clinics and tech companies. Families from other states came forward, confirming similar experiences. The evidence was overwhelming. Under public pressure, the hospital stopped responding. They took down their website. Lawyers representing them began quietly quitting. Still, the damage was done. Luke had made sure of that. He worked behind the scenes, giving interviews, providing access to reporters, pushing for accountability. He was no longer the quiet CEO. Now he was a father fighting for justice. What started as a quiet investigation was turning into a global scandal no one could ignore. Authorities stepped in next. Federal law enforcement agencies launched official probes, and subpoenas were issued. The investigation uncovered a network of private clinics linked to the main hospital. Inside these clinics, they found entire rooms of hidden records, shelves stacked with paper files, drawers full of handwritten notes, computer servers packed with patient data, most undocumented in any official system. The worst part, dozens of cases showed signs of unauthorized procedures on babies and young children. None of the parents had known the full truth. Medical terms had been used to confuse. Pain had been labeled normal. Now, with the real documents in hand, prosecutors had enough to move forward. Doctors involved were arrested and charged. Crimes included medical conspiracy, insurance fraud, endangering minors, and ethical violations. Several high-level executives were indicted too. Secret testimonies from insiders confirmed the top people had known for years and let it continue. The trial was long and public. Families from across the country testified. Some cried, others shouted, others sat silently, unable to speak through their pain. Amelia took the stand with quiet determination. She told the full story, from the moment she entered the mansion to the day she discovered the implant. She explained the baby's suffering, the ignored signs, the lies, and the silence. The court listened. Luke testified too, admitting his guilt for trusting the wrong people, but vowing never to stay silent again. The evidence left no room for defense. The jury looked shocked. Medical professionals who'd sworn oaths to protect life had become tools in a money-driven machine. When the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted. The hospital was found guilty. The court ordered its total shutdown. All affiliated clinics were investigated. The ruling also included financial compensation to every affected family, an amount reaching hundreds of millions in total. The most powerful moment came weeks later, when several executives and doctors were escorted from court in handcuffs. Cameras captured it all. National news showed their faces live. People who'd once seemed untouchable were now held accountable. They'd hidden behind titles, institutions, and legal language. But none of that mattered anymore. The truth had won. Public reaction was massive. Thousands marched in support of the families. New laws were proposed to tighten oversight on private clinics. Ethics committees formed. International watchdogs began reviewing cases with similar red flags. Amelia returned to a quiet life, but she knew she'd changed something forever. Luke, on the other hand, became a public figure in health advocacy. He gave speeches, lobbied for reforms, met with lawmakers. He didn't do it for fame. He did it for Noah, for all the children whose voices had been ignored. What began in silence ended in global justice. Luke stood outside the courtroom, holding Noah in his arms. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, but he ignored them. He kissed his son's forehead and hugged him tighter. This child, once seen as broken or sick, had survived something evil. Not by chance, but because someone cared enough to pay attention. Amelia stood nearby, watching silently. She didn't need thanks. She'd done what was right. Luke turned to her and nodded. They'd won, but the fight wasn't over. He'd already set up a foundation in Noah's name, dedicated to protecting children from medical abuse. He made a promise in his final interview. No one else will go through what we did. Not while I'm alive. The story had made history. A hospital had fallen, executives imprisoned. Millions learned the truth, and for the first time, the system was forced to face justice. No one got away unscathed. The surgery was scheduled quickly, just a week after the court ruling. Luke chose one of the country's top pediatric neurosurgeons, someone recommended by Dr. Arriaga and trusted by Amelia. The procedure was delicate. The implant was near the baby's lower spine, close to nerve groups controlling posture and pain signals. It took several hours. Amelia and Luke waited together in a quiet hospital room, barely speaking. When the surgeon finally came out, his expression was calm. "It's done," he said. "The device has been successfully removed. No permanent damage." Luke sat down slowly, overwhelmed with relief. Amelia put her hand on his shoulder. Both knew this was just one step, but an important one. For the first time, the foreign object inside Noah's body was gone. Now they could only hope the baby would finally feel peace. Real peace, not the forced comfort they'd seen before. That night, Noah was taken back to the recovery room, still asleep from anesthesia. Nurses monitored his vitals, machines beeping softly beside him. Amelia stayed by his side, refusing to leave. Luke joined her hours later with food, but neither ate. They were too focused on the small figure lying in the hospital bed. Around midnight, Noah began to stir. At first, just a small twitch. Then his breathing deepened. His arms, which used to stay tightly bent and clenched, now rested freely at his sides. Amelia leaned closer, watching carefully. For the first time since she'd met him, Noah slept lying flat. No need to be held or propped. No crying. No shivers. Just slow, deep breaths. Amelia covered her mouth and started crying silently. Luke saw her and said nothing. He just pulled her close and hugged her tight. Both knew what this moment meant. Amelia had seen many babies before. She'd cared for dozens, but never one like Noah. His struggle had become part of her life, something she carried deeply. Seeing him sleep now, peacefully, without pain, was more than emotional. It was healing. It was proof that everything they'd done, all the effort, fear, and risks, had led to something good. Luke didn't need to say thank you again. He'd said it before. What he did now meant more. He stood beside Amelia, took her hand, and introduced her to the staff, not as a nanny, but as family. "She saved my son," he told them. "And she saved me too." In that room, everything had changed. The pain didn't erase, but it no longer controlled them. The silence that once filled the mansion with sorrow was now replaced by something new. It was softer, warmer, a quiet that no longer hurt. A home that could finally feel like home again. Back at the mansion, things felt different. The rooms, once heavy with sadness, now echoed with new sounds. Noah laughed more, moved more freely, slept deeper. The medical equipment was removed from his room. Dark curtains were replaced with lighter ones. Nurses came less often, and when they did, it was just for routine checks. Luke stopped holding daily meetings in isolation. He started working in his office again, but with Noah often nearby. Amelia helped build new routines, morning walks in the garden, fun bath times, soft music in the afternoons. There was no rush to heal. They took things slow, but everything felt right. Now, the pain that once consumed the house had loosened its grip. The halls weren't quiet from loss. They were quiet from peace. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel haunted by what was lost. It felt alive with what had been saved. Meanwhile, justice continued. Those responsible for the implanted devices and secret programs remained behind bars. More trials were set. More evidence came to light. The clinic's internal files revealed even more victims, children used as test subjects for profit. Luke used his influence and resources to support these families. He funded legal teams, paid for real treatments, and ensured no one was forgotten. Amelia turned down Luke's money. She'd never done any of this for pay. But when he asked if there was anything else he could support, she made one request. She wanted to start a foundation in memory of her son Hugo, a place to help families spot medical abuse, expose hidden practices, and protect children too young to speak for themselves. Luke agreed instantly. The foundation launched in 2 months, fully funded and run by Amelia. It was her way of turning pain into action. The foundation opened its doors quietly, but quickly became known nationwide. Parents wrote in with questions. Doctors reached out to volunteer. Amelia spent her days on new cases, reviewing documents, talking to families. Her experience with Noah gave her new purpose. She wasn't just trying to save one child anymore. She was protecting hundreds. The memory of her own son, Hugo, lived on in every life she helped safeguard. Back at the mansion, Noah slept peacefully every night, arms open, breathing softly. Amelia still visited often. She no longer worked there, but she was always welcome. Luke called her for advice, updates, or sometimes just to talk. The mansion no longer belonged to pain. It belonged to healing. What began as a story of loss ended with hope. Amelia had saved one life, but through her courage, she'd changed many more. And now, not just one child slept in peace. Hundreds would, thanks to her. We've finally reached the end of this story. I'm thrilled you've made it this far. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below what you thought and which was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.